You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Over the past few days, we've been reading a lot of reports of a rare but fatal fungal infection that is being detected amongst COVID survivors and recovering COVID patients. Mucormycosis, or the black fungal infection, is said to spread rapidly through the sinuses and lungs, leading to a loss of eyesight and, in certain instances, even affecting brain functions. Ganga Ram Hospital in Delhi reported at least 6 cases of the black fungal infection on 6th May. 2 days later, on 8th May, Maharashtra reported that 200 such patients were being treated in the state, amongst whom at least 8 have lost their lives. In Gujarat, which has at least 100 reported cases of mucormycosis as of now, the state government has announced separate wards in COVID hospitals to treat such patients. While the sudden upsurge in cases of the infection is raising alarms, doctors say that it's not a new infection at all. Although it's not a very commonly occurring one, black fungal infections have been detected amongst immunodeficient patients mostly, but what seems to be triggering this infection amongst certain COVID survivors now is the indiscriminate or perhaps untimely use of steroids that are being used to treat coronavirus. But how exactly are steroids inducing this infection? Which COVID patients are vulnerable, and what symptoms do we need to watch out for in recovering COVID patients? We take all our questions to Dr. Aparna Mahajan, ENT consultant at Fortis Hospital. You're tuned into The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbari. So let's start with what mucormycosis is exactly. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, says that this infection is caused by a group of molds called mucormycetes, which survives through the environment, especially in soil and in decaying organic matter such as rotten vegetables, leaves or rotten wood, etc. Although most people come in frequent contact with the fungal spores in the environment, Dr. Aparna Mahajan says that it requires specific conditions to thrive in the human body and trigger an infection.
So all this all around us, especially in a humid environment or having dirt around, in that environment it is equally present. So we normally inhale, but it does not get the right medium to launch. Once it gets the right environment and the right medium to lodge inside our body, that is when it starts growing inside our body.
So who all can get infected by this fungus? What conditions are conducive for this fungus to grow inside human bodies? Usually, those with a healthy immune system are not vulnerable to this infection, but diabetic patients or immunocompromised people with AIDS or cancer or burn patients or even implant patients are at risk.
Yeah, high glucose level. So in diabetes, when the glucosamine likes glucose, so whenever there's high glucose in the tissue, then it finds that environment very conducive for its growth. Another reason is people with decreased immunity. So all those immunocompromised people who are on immunosuppressant therapy, say transplant recipients, so they have low neutrophils. So whenever the neutrophils in the body are low, then there is no one to oppose the mucus from growing. So that is what a low neutrophilic environment would harbor mucus growth. Again, if you must have noticed that in COVID-19, people are getting serum ferritin done, especially when IL-6 is raised. In that case, when the iron stores in the cells, normally the cells are not containing any free iron. But then when the iron in the body, it increases beyond a limit, then mucus needs iron for its growth. So whenever iron is more, whenever ferritin is raised, these people are more susceptible to get a mucus infection.
Now, this infection is known to spread rapidly when undetected and has a mortality rate somewhere between 50 to 70%. But Dr. Mahajan talks about how exactly it spreads to the body, when exactly can this infection turn fatal, and what can be done to arrest it.
Yes, it is very fatal. So if the most common place where the mucus grows is the nose and the sinuses, and this is where from this part it travels to all other parts of the body, say brain, eye, lungs, or the GI tract, the stomach. So once it is in the nose and sinus, it is not arrested there itself, then it can prove to be fatal, because one can lose his vision or his eye, and one can have it spread to the brain in parts which are not accessible to the surgeon.
Right.
So these parts which are not accessible to the surgeon, it's very difficult to remove the mucor in toto, and so the therapy which is there, or the antifungal therapy, does not work. So unless and until you can take the fungus out of the body, no medicine is going to control the fungus. So you need to take out all the fungus, which is quite possible in the sinuses and the nose, right, when it is there and limited to that part, and that can give a good clearance of the disease and good outcome. But on the contrary, if it's an extensive disease, then it's very difficult to provide a complete clearance, and hence the patient can have a fatal outcome.
But the question is, why are we seeing a spike in these fungal infections in the second wave? What is the link between COVID and black fungal infections? Dr. Mahajan explains that what happens with COVID infections and the steroid treatment that is being provided is that while it decreases the immune responses of patients, it also ends up elevating glucose levels, even in non-diabetic patients, making them vulnerable to mucormycosis.
Another thing is that COVID in particular, it decreases our immunity also. So, and they are being given steroids.
Right.
So when COVID, the reaction of body because of COVID and the steroids, all in conjunction, can lead to production of more of glucose in the body, because COVID per se can also harm our cells in the pancreas and create a de novo diabetes. So many patients have not had diabetes before, but due to COVID and the steroids, they develop diabetes during that period, or they develop high blood sugar levels during that period. So these are the people who are more susceptible to the infection with mucor.
But it's not something new that has come up only now in the second wave. There were known cases in the first wave as well. Surely we're reading more reports on these cases now, but that's because the caseload has increased significantly in this surge.
Yeah, so in the first wave also, I had reported a few cases back in September last year.
Okay.
So it was happening in the first wave, but it was, since the numbers were not as many as they are there in the second wave, that's why we were seeing lesser cases. But yes, we did have 4 to 5 cases in the last wave also, and they were purely because of the COVID per se. So we had increased numbers, but now since the number of cases of COVID have increased, that's why we have more number of cases of mucor coming in.
I see. So is it steroids then that are triggering this infection in COVID patients? While data is being collected and studies are being conducted to get a clearer picture, it wouldn't be fair to conclude that steroids are causing it. As we know, steroids have come really handy in reducing inflammation in COVID-positive patients, but they can also reduce immunity. But what Dr. Mahajan says is that it is the injudicious or untimely use of steroids that can endanger patients to this fungal infection.
Steroid is one of the drugs which decreases certain sequelae of COVID. So I would not say that it is wrong to give steroids, because steroids actually save the life of the patient, especially when he is having a severe immune response. So, but if they are given early during the course of the disease, or if they are given in more than required dose, or if they are given in more than required length of the time, and not in consideration of the general profile of the patient, say the blood sugar levels, say the normal factors, that whether the patient is a chronic kidney disease patient or a transplant recipient, or the patient has high ferritin, and factors like that. So in those cases, one has to have a high suspicion, and in those cases, one should very judiciously use the steroid.
However, not all steroids can lead to this infection either. It's only certain systemic steroids like dexamethasone and methylprednisolone, which are being used to treat patients with respiratory failure, can potentially trigger this infection. You can also read a detailed FAQ on this on Quint. But before you panic, Dr. Mahajan explains the kind of symptoms that we need to watch out for among COVID recovered or recovering patients. She also adds a word of caution for COVID patients.
Excessive nasal thrusting, or nasal nose dryness in the nose, or blockage in the nose, or discoloration of the skin of the nose or cheek, or swelling in the cheek, swelling in the eye, or some symptoms in the eye like excessive watering of the eye, or diplopia, that is double vision. So they are the most common. So if someone is experiencing, what is most common is excessive crusting. If someone is experiencing excessive crusting in the nose, then he must go and get himself. And the single most sensitive investigation to diagnose mucor is nasal endoscopy. So endoscopy of the nose is done by an ENT surgeon, and people should have a low threshold for ENT consultation, or they should immediately, if they experience any of such symptoms and have specially recovered from COVID, then they should visit their ENT specialist to get themselves examined and evaluated and to rule out mucor.
I see. So, any word of caution for COVID patients from you?
Yeah, so COVID patients who have recovered from COVID in particular, they should observe themselves for such symptoms or their family members for such symptoms like nasal crusting, swelling of the cheek or blockage in the nose or any congestion in the nose or any discoloration of the skin of the cheek or nose or any eye swelling, watering of eye. And any of these symptoms are there, then they should immediately contact an ENT surgeon. And in fact, there are reports now, and since more and more cases of mucor are coming in, people are also, rhinological societies are also advising routine nasal endoscopies for patients, high-risk groups who have recovered from COVID. So routine maybe in 10 to 15 days, regular follow-ups in ENT OPDs and nasal endoscopies are should be conducted for such patients so that we can detect any mucor early.
The editor for this podcast is Shelly Walia, and it's been produced by me, your host, Shorbri. If you like listening to The Big Story, please log on to the Quint's website and check out the podcast section for more.